And welcome back to College Basketball Review Studio. I'm Matt Majinski. That's Dan Siegel. That's Ariel Puderman. Tonight we are counting down teams number 90 to 81 in our college basketball off-season rank. Of course, these are the top teams heading into the season. But before we get started, as always, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We want to continue making great videos for you guys at home. But to do that, we need your support. So make sure to sub so we can get those numbers up. But guys, let's jump right into it. We had 10 teams the last time out. Of course, those were the first 10 teams that just made the cut. These teams, maybe you could argue some of them shouldn't have made the cut, but overall we're getting deeper into this top 100 where you got some more intriguing teams to look at here, and we'll obviously get to that in a little bit. But I want to start with our first team, number 90, and Ariel, you can kick us off. It's the George Washington Revolutionaries. If you guys, by the way, watched us last year, all three of us loved this George Washington team, and they let us down. So will there be disappointment this year for GW?
Yeah, it's going to be hard for me to get on the bus just because last year every podcast I was just talking about how much I love George Washington. I was telling my friends and my family, you guys got to watch George Washington this year. They're going to be so good, and I'm going to prove everyone wrong. And I was so wrong. I mean, they lost to Delaware, who pretty much had 6 players at home. They lost a bunch of games they should have won in conference play. Didn't even come close to the tournament. So really disappointing season last year. So maybe this year they'll turn around, but here's the best way to describe the way they built their roster. I think Chris Caputo, their head coach, went into the portal finder thing, probably on like Verbal Commits or 247, and basically put a filter of Power 5 players and then 9th best player on each team. And he picked every single one of those. It's just a weird fit. I think last year he had a lot of really talented mid-major guys, and this year he said, what if we just pick guys who didn't get a bunch of minutes last year, and maybe with advanced minutes that they'll prove that why they were Power 5 players. And I just don't get it, to be honest. I think they might be really bad this year. My only hope is someone takes that lead, maybe like Terrence Arsenault. He was awesome at Houston, but he was really bad last year at NC State. So like I said, he's just banking on a lot of those guys. If there's like 9 of those guys on team, if maybe 3 of them kind of take that next level, then maybe they'll be good. But it's hard to imagine right now. It'll be really interesting to see how this team does all season long.
Dan, what do you got to add?
Yeah, no, just a bunch of throws at the dartboard. I think they could maybe be a decent team this year. I think there's potential for it to fall flat on its face once again. Amari Weatherspoon, the Pitt transfer, I do not like him. He's just not a winning player. They got a returner, right, Gene Aranguren, who was pretty disappointing last year. I thought it would be better. Power conference retreads. I feel like they're down here at George Washington and not at their power conference schools for a reason. I'm pretty much with Ariel here.
I think there's one player I want to shout out. It's Ryder Frost. Had an somewhat intriguing freshman year with Notre Dame, a pretty bad Notre Dame team. But look, his first 2 games with the Irish as a freshman, he had 15 points and 10 points, had a 12-point game later on in the season at Pittsburgh, definitely showed the ability to shoot the ball. I think that could be a guy. And like you mentioned, Ariel, Terrence Arsenault, but they're going to need to all play very well. And like you said, these were a lot of guys that weren't doing that at their previous power conference stops. So it'll be interesting to see if Chris Caputo can get his vision to work. But yeah, it's going to be tough in the A-10 for George Washington this year. I think last year was their year. They let us down. I'm not sure if they're going to get back there, and maybe they'll pull a reverse Uno card, right? Like we're all 3 of us this time are down on them, and they're probably going to go win 30 games. So let's move on to Rutgers at number 89. This is the Scarlet Knights team, of course, coached by
Steve Pikiell.
I'm saying that because, honestly, it probably shouldn't be the coach anymore. Steve Pikiell has not done a good job with this Rutgers program. Let's just be frank about it. But Ariel, he does return. I can't even believe I'm saying this right now. I don't know what's crazier, that Steve Pikiell is still the coach or that Steve Pikiell was able to get so many guys to buy in and return to Piscataway. But do we believe, Ariel, that the Scarlet Knights can give him a good season here and extend Steve Pikiell another year and maybe make some noise in the Big Ten?
I'll say this. I think they'll be better than last year, which is a pretty low ceiling to have, but they'll be better. Like you said, they bring back some of those key pieces who will have that natural progression. They bring in Darren Smith from Central Connecticut State, who averaged 20 points per game. My question is, how good does Rutgers have to be for Pikiell to keep his job? Is it tournament? Is it top 10 in the Big Ten? Is it round of 16, anything like that. I think that's going to be really interesting to monitor, just how much of a leash they give him, or if they're just like, this is the best we can do in the NIL era. And we know we can't do much better, so let's just keep him around. But Dan, I know you had some stuff to say about this team, so I don't want to take too much, but like I said, I think they'll be better than last year, but their ceiling is just so limited in the modern day, especially being in this conference.
I think tournament or bust is a pretty fair expectation for Rutgers as far as keeping or letting go of Steve Peichel as a coach, because
I want to hold you there, because we were saying tournament or bust for team number 89, Dan. So
it's not looking great. It's not looking great, but
we're siding with the bust side, but
yeah, but I think you have to expect, with the expanded tournament now, I think it's fair to at least expect in a good year any power conference program to make the tournament. That's my opinion. I think there's a little more upside than Ariel's letting on here. I kind of like the way that Peichel built his roster here. He has a lot of different types of players into his roster. I think I really like the 4 international prospects that he got. Specifically, Mervetti Mateo was someone 6'10", 260 from the Congo originally, has played ball recently in Spain. He's very interesting to me. Obviously, you mentioned Tariq Francis, who was actually more efficient last year at Rutgers than at NJIT. And then they kind of got the transfer class. You got your mid-major producers. You got your power conference guys that are looking for another opportunity, a better fit. I think this is an appropriate ranking. So I guess that means that I'm pretty much leaning towards Steve Peichel likely being fired after this year. But the reason why is because it's just such a tough hill to climb in a Big Ten that's good. And like they got some good teams, especially at the top. They'll be double-digit underdogs in some games for sure.
Big thing for me was a couple freshmen that did well for Rutgers last year that are back. And Angelino Mark, really good second half of the season with Rutgers. Looks like he could be the potential point guard and let Tariq Francis play the 2 this season for Rutgers. And I'm going to be really interested in that, because Rutgers last year was one of the worst teams at playmaking, and even by the statistic of assists, right? It doesn't get easier than that. How many assists are you getting as a team? Rutgers wasn't getting a lot. And Lino Mark changed that, because when I look at this Rutgers team, guys, I see a team with a lot of scores, but there's only one ball. And I don't think Steve Peichel, as good of a transfer portal class he got, really brought in a good playmaker to kind of help out with that. Just brought in a lot of scorers, a lot of guys who can go isolation. So I think it's going to be on the sophomore Lino Mark to distribute evenly. He showed his potential of scoring last season, but I think it's going to be all about playmaking this year. Otherwise, this could be another mess in New Brunswick and Piscataway, whatever you want to call it. It could be Steve Peichel's last season for sure.
This could be like Minnesota last year, where they're a 500 team most of the year, but they keep it close with a Michigan State or a Michigan or Wisconsin. Maybe they even win 1 or 2 of those games. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that this year.
Be interesting. How about let's go to another Northeast program that hasn't really done well recently, but they did move on from their last head coach, and they've got a new one. It's Boston College. It's the Eagles. It's Luke Murray. And Dan, I'm obviously going to let you expand on Boston College, but my first question to you is, will Luke Murray set a culture like many are expecting him to, or will, for lack of a better words, will this be a little bit of a clown show, because we all saw what happened a week or 2 ago on social media with the play-by-play and the color guys getting let go?
Yeah, no, I don't know what the true story is there. Definitely a bad luck and just an abuse of power, if that's true in any way. But overall, I really like this hire. I really like what Luke Murray has already brought into his team as far as the transfer portal class, which is pretty much just his entire team. You have to understand that Boston College has been a pretty horrendous program. They're on a 17-year NCAA tournament drought. They've had 3 winning seasons in that span. They've had 4 top 100 KenPom finishes in that span. So they're just really bad. So I really like this roster, but that's probably the reason why we're playing it conservative and putting them at 88. But with that said, I mean, I like their positional size. I think Money Williams, who averaged 20-plus points per game at Montana, he's the guard who's physical enough to really have his game translate to the power conference level. And then this is a guy I'm super intrigued in, Zach Smrikar from international ranks. He is a guy, let me read this off to you. I've been floating this stat around a little bit. So on the 2025 FIBA U19 All-Star team, there were 4 players AJ DeBansa, Christian Anderson, Mikkel Brown, Heinz Steinbeck, and then the fifth, Zach Smrekar. So you got 4 lottery picks from this last NBA draft, and then you got this Boston College guy who's going to play on the wing. Defense will be super suspect, but I think they're going to score a lot of points and at least be a fun, frisky bottom half of the ACC team this year and not lose their bye games finally. Hopefully.
Ariel, what do you think?
My biggest note here, and I put it, was just league pass team. I think they're going to be a team that probably doesn't have a lot of games on national TV, but they're going to be a lot of fun to watch for all the reasons that Dan just said. I mean, Money Williams is an awesome scorer, awesome all-around player who could just give him the ball when he needed a bucket, and he'll score every time. I also really like their depth. I think they did a great job with that. Obviously, something they've lacked in the past. So I think in a long season, that'll definitely play a positive part in their chances of really competing in the ACC. We had them finishing 14th in the ACC in our prediction. I would be more surprised if they finished 14th than if they finished 9th. I think that they have the potential to finish top 10 for sure, and I expect them to at this point, just with the team that they have. And I think Luke Murray, he's learned from the best, and as much as you probably hate to hear that, Matt, Dan Hurley's probably the best in the game right now, and he's had a lot of time to develop and learn under him. So I trust this team. I really do. I think they're going to finish higher than 88th.
I'm just kind of laughing because we had a running joke in my family group chat last year that whenever Bill Murray was shown on the TV, my dad would just get very mad and sort of turned it into a bit where he'd be like, "Get Bill Murray off my TV. I don't want to see him." Well, guess what? You don't get to see him now because Boston College isn't going to be on TV at all unless you're just watching a Boston College game at random, which maybe you will be because they do have potential here. Look, I'm just going to say this and go off of you a little bit. When you have Money Williams, you're going to have a little bit of a chance no matter what. And we look at these mid-major guys, not all of them that average 15 to 20 a game in the mid-major ranks are going to work out in power conference, but you just have that feeling that Money Williams is one of those guys who will work out. I don't have any doubt that he's going to be a great player in the ACC for BC. Jacob Furphy, a guy who didn't see time at UConn, could he have a breakout year? I think that's one of those things. Luke Murray was able to bring him over from UConn to BC. Could be a little bit more of a project than we thought. Obviously, he could be a guy that maybe breaks out with this Eagles team. The only thing I saw that surprised me was there wasn't a lot of size on this Boston College team. You look at UConn and what they did with guys like Adama Sanogo, Donovan Clingan. Like, UConn was known under the Hurley era for having a lot of size. I just didn't see the same type of size on this Boston College roster. I wonder if that was by design or maybe if Luke Murray just couldn't get exactly who he wanted. I know they do have 1 7-footer. We'll see how that plays out. Maybe we could see some things that were a little bit different from when he was on the bench in Stores. With that, though, let's go to South Florida coming up at number 87, the Bulls. Obviously, this is a Bulls program that's gone through a lot of coaches over the past few years, and mostly unfortunate for them. Obviously, we've talked about it before, but the late Amir Abdur-Rahim was the head coach for South Florida. Obviously, they need a new coach. Brian Hodgson comes in. He has an amazing season last year, leads them to the NCAA tournament, and bolts for a new job at Providence. So, Dan, Chris Mack is now the coach. Can things settle down a little bit for this South Florida program? Because obviously it's been quite the whirlwind for them over the last handful of years. Maybe they'll get some consistency in year one with Matt.
Yeah. Another team with not a single returning player, completely new roster. So we got 2 in a row. That was the same case with Boston College. I really like this backcourt. I think it's at the very least extremely electric between Sonny Wilson from Toledo and then AJ Dantzler from Coastal Carolina. Just 2 guys that are really good shot makers. Dantzler in specific just has unlimited range and just could hit some crazy shots. So I'm really excited for that. Zayden High is interesting, transfers down from North Carolina. I think he could be a solid starting caliber American Conference player. I do think the depth is very thin. That is something that typically happens when you are completely recreating a roster and you arrive a little bit late onto campus. But again, like the top of the American, we talked about Memphis last episode. There's nothing that really stands out to me. We have them second. We had Memphis third. We'll have another team first next episode. But I think they're just as much in the running as anyone else in this conference.
If we remember back a couple months ago, and I talked about this a lot last podcast, we did our rankings of the first-year hires And I actually put Mac last out of all of them. So I'm not a huge fan of the hire, clearly. But I think he did an okay job this offseason. Like you said, great backcourt. I am a little worried about the size of the backcourt. 6'1" and 6'2", Sonny Wilson and Dantzler. Obviously, that hasn't worked that well in modern basketball just because we see so many big guards these days and so many offenses revolved around picking on weak defenders. So I'm interested to see how that goes and if their offensive ability can kind of overpower that. And then you mentioned Zayden High, who I really like. He did a great job at UNC when Caleb Wilson got hurt late in the season, kind of extending his minutes, and he had a couple double-digit rebound games. So now kind of transferring down, I think he could be one of the best players in the American. But other than that, yeah, I mean, this is a better team than Memphis and some of the other teams we mentioned in the last pod. I think they'll definitely finish top 3. It just, can they make the tournament in Chris Mack's year 1? I think that's still to be seen.
Yeah, definitely a little bit of a lesser team this season, but Chris Mack, definitely a winning coach, at least in my mind. I think that'll get South Florida maybe back to the NCAA tournament, but I don't think this is as good as they were last year. Brian Hodgson had a great team, and he obviously coached them well as well. Let's move on to the Big 12. The Utah Utes coming in, a team that we really don't expect to compete in the Big 12, but when you look at power conference teams, most of them are still going to be in your top 100 when you put together these rankings. That's just how it goes. I'm just going to be honest. If we're talking about Utah in South Florida's conference, they probably are looking like one of the better teams in the American. In the Big 12, not so much. Ariel, I'll let you take the show here, but this is literally all I have to say. 10 wins with Terrence Brown and Don McHenry. That couldn't get it done. They're no longer there. How the heck does this Utah Utes team expect to be any better this season? I think they could be – I'll be real. I think this team could win 7 games next year, and I wouldn't be shocked.
I think they'll be better. I think, yes, the talent isn't as good from a top-heavy standpoint, but those guys, they were just passing to each other out there. They weren't even letting other people touch the ball, and both of them were such horrible defenders too. So I think kind of building a more complete roster, which is what Jensen did, is really going to help them. I think Noam Yakov, the Israeli transfer, I think he played in Belgium last year. He's a guy that a lot of people thought could be a potential first-round pick. I think he's going to put up big numbers. And I really like the Jackson Holcomb addition from Utah Valley, staying in state. Really great player last year, really took a different step up at the end of last year. So I think he's a great piece. He's definitely a Big 12 caliber player. And Babacar Faye as well, who didn't play last year, but he can really hold down the front court from a defensive standpoint. But it all ties back to this. This isn't a Big 12 roster, unfortunately. This is a great mid-major roster, but it's not one that can really compete in the Big 12, unfortunately. And like I said, they're going to win more than 2 conference games, but 5, 6, 7, that's probably where they're going to end up. And probably playing first day of the Big 12 tournament, probably not making it to the second, if we're being honest.
Dan, any more to say on that? Like, do you think that Utah can maybe win a 3rd or a 4th Big 12 game more than their 2 last year?
I think I'm as down on them as you are, Matt. I think Jackson Holcomb will score only because somebody has to score. There just has to be points scored. I don't think it'll be necessarily efficient. I'm not as much a fan of Yakov as some people are. I think if you're a 6'1" guard, you have an adjustment period. You're not an elite ball handler. I'm just not sure what he's necessarily going to provide at a high level right away. Yeah, I think you're lacking firepower. You're lacking proven commodities. Yeah, clear bottom of the Big 12.
I just think it's also a tough situation for Alex Jensen to be in, right? Like, tough to recruit to Utah, tough season coming off of last year. It's tough to recruit after you won 10 games and you're in a power conference. I don't see the Alex Jensen experiment lasting long here for Utah, but maybe I'll be surprised. Maybe this could be one of those years that he just proved himself as a coach, because talent-wise, it's not really showing there. But this could be a year where he wins 15 or 16 games and you're like, oh, all of a sudden, hey, maybe he's not too bad after all, and something could grow. But that's what's at stake for me for this Utah team. Let's move on back to the ACC. We already had Boston College, Dan. Now we have Notre Dame, a team that finally – they don't have Marcus Burton. That's probably a little bit of a blessing in disguise, I think, because of how much he was always injured. And if you're going to talk about Don McHenry and Terrence Brown shooting a lot of shots, you have to put Marcus Burton right in that same category. But let's be real. I think we can all agree Micah Shrewsbury needs a season to save his job here. He did some really good stuff at Penn State, but he also got really lucky because he had a really good roster at Penn State. Gets this Notre Dame job, hasn't really done too well. So, Dan, could this be a year where Micah Shrewsbury is able to save his job for at least another season?
I think one thing that really deters me is this is a little bit in the weeds, but he lost an assistant named Kyle Getter to Cal Baptist, who's now the head coach there. Big offensive mind. I think a lot of the cool concepts, the good stuff that Notre Dame was running was because of him. And I think that's a way bigger loss than people realize. So that makes me not so confident in this team. I also just don't love their roster. Logan Duncombe from Winthrop, he's an interesting player. He has a lot of points under his belt. Is he a elite or even like a solid ACC player? Maybe, but I'm just excited to see what he could do. Same with Ethan Roberts from Penn, a similar scenario. Like, good mid-major player. Can he translate? We'll see. They're going to need like Braden Smith or Braden Shrewsbury to just have outlier good seasons, like 90th percentile.
We need to clarify for the people listening at home. This is not Purdue Braden Smith getting a fifth year and transferring in state to Notre Dame. This is former Colgate and Gonzaga guard Braden Smith. Still a very good player, but I just know there's someone listening at home that's like, whoa, Braden Smith, all-time leading assist player going to Notre Dame. Hold your horses. Not yet, at least. Maybe.
I think they'd be about 50 spots higher if they had that Braden Smith. But no, they need one of the backcourt Bradens to just have some season way better than we expected for this team to be anywhere relevant in the ACC picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe Shrewsbury's a little too old for this because he's 50, but what he really needs to do is become like a high-level assistant for a few years and kind of learn a little bit more and try it again, because he has one winning year in 5 seasons. It was that Penn State year that got him this Notre Dame job, but clearly it hasn't worked. Clearly the roster construction hasn't been good, and I don't think it's like a money issue, even though most of the money goes to the football program. I think it's just a coaching and health and everything in between. It's just clearly not working there. I do love Logan Duncombe, though. He's too good to be a mid-major player last year. There was a stat I remember. It was points per 36 minutes, and it was like AJ DeBonsa 1, Darren Pearson 2, and Logan Duncombe 3. Like, that just shows how good he was and how efficient he was. So I'm excited to see him play at the Power 5 level, but it seems like Micah just wanted to make his son Braden a Power 5 level player. And not that he's just like a horrible player. He shot 40% from 3, but it seems like he built his team around his son, which doesn't make sense because his son's not an all-American level player, and that's really hurt him. And unfortunately, it's going to be a little too late for him to kind of move on and let him kind of build his own team. So not high on this Notre Dame team at all. I think they could finish well below Boston College this year.
Wow, I actually think they're better than Boston College, but maybe I'm just giving Shrewsbury too much credit, because I like what Braden Smith can actually do. I do like the Logan Duncombe get. I think Ethan Roberts could be a really good, intriguing player, but this might also be me looking at what they did in their mid-major leagues and thinking, oh, this is just going to totally translate to the ACC, and then it just doesn't at all. We'll see. I do know this is that when you get a guy from Colgate and a guy from Penn, you got one of the smartest teams in the league. So I think Notre Dame maybe should have some of the fewest turnovers and some real good basketball IQ, but I don't know if that's really going to make the difference, because I just don't see this Notre Dame team really competing near the top of the ACC, but I think I'm higher than both of you guys on them. I'll make a little bit of a bold prediction. I could see, if this works out, I could see Shrewsbury saving his job and this Notre Dame team winning 20 games and maybe even sneaking into the NCAA tournament, but that is like a pure feeling if everything works right for them, because I'm not really going to trust his coaching abilities with them.
Yeah, I mean, their bench is horrendous as well. Unless Jonathan Sanderson is the number 81 recruit, just breaks out. They could be in the 6-man rotation all year long, and everyone could just be limping in early February.
And that wouldn't be a surprise either, because I feel like that's happened the last couple of years there as well in South Bend. All right, let's toss it back to you for number 84 in our CBB rank 2026 rankings. It's Boise State. If there's 3 things that we know in life, it's death, taxes, and don't doubt Leon Rice, because he's going to make it work at Boise State. But is this a year that we should be a little bit concerned with their roster?
I think there's definitely concern compared to previous years. They don't have that obvious guy who's going to take the leap like Meadow or Dylan Andrews or anything like that. Also cool to see them in the Pac-12. I'm really excited to watch that league and see how some of these teams compete. Obviously, there's a lot of Mountain West teams that moved over, but also seeing some advanced competition like Gonzaga. So curious where Boise State ends up there. But like you mentioned, Leon Rice, he just gets it done. 14 of the last 17 seasons, 20-plus wins. There's a lot of holes on this team, I think. What I do like, though, is Pearson Carmichael. I think he's the guy who's going to take that leap. He's the 5th leading scorer last year, and he has the potential to kind of be an all Mountain West player at his very best. Also, an interesting one is Ty Rodgers. He hasn't played in 2 years and got injured again. He's out indefinitely right now, but started 38 games for Illinois his sophomore year. If he can come back for conference play and be healthy, then he could be a huge piece for this team. But like you said, Matt, it's not as much as a sure thing as the last few years, but like you said with Rice as well, he'll get them to a good place where they'll at least be an at-large team. It's just whether that they can take that leap, especially in the new Pac-12, where things might be a little bit harder for him.
Yeah. Dan?
I'm going to assume for the sake of this preview that we will not see Ty Rodgers. I really hope we do, but he's just, with all of his injuries, unfortunately, it hasn't been reliable that he would be on the court. But even with that said, I think the floor for Boise State is higher than you guys are giving them credit for. I don't hate the roster construction at all. I like that Campbell transfer, Budka. He slots nicely into that 4 spot. I agree on Carmichael. Damari Wheeler-Thomas from North Dakota State is a solid Pac-12 point guard. And more so, I think especially in this NIL era, the players are shifting all over the place, but the programs are actually a lot more consistent because the roster caliber is just consistent year to year. And I say that to say that Leon Rice is pretty much a safe bet to be in the 40s and 50s almost every year if you look at their previous seasons. I just think he figures out how to elevate this team. 84 seems like an absolute worst case scenario here. If we're making a bet on which of these teams is going to finish highest in KenPom, the 10 teams that we're talking about today, I'm undoubtedly taking Boise State.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I like the confidence there as well. I will say this, too, on Damari Wheeler-Thomas. Did a little bit of an article on him. You can check it out on our website, cbbreview.com. Played for North Dakota State last year. He had a real interesting kind of journey that he's continuing, obviously, where he was a starter, averaged almost 11 points per game as a sophomore at North Dakota State, and then took a red shirt the next year to kind of watch it like a coach. And then that's kind of what he said in his press conference leading into their game against Michigan State in the NCAA tournament. Ended up having a big-time season last year, almost 15 points per game. So it ended up working out well for him, and now he's back with a new team in Boise State, kind of leveling up from North Dakota State. So props to him for doing that, and I think he should be a pretty good guard for Boise State. But, yeah, if I'm looking at this team, not Leon Rice's best, but like I said at the beginning, you don't doubt Leon Rice because he seems to always know how to get it done one way or another. Let's move on to another Pac-12 team. I know this was an article I wrote, but Dan, I'll flip it to you first. It's the Oregon State Beavers. Justin Joyner in his head coach, and there has to be a lot of hype around him, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Too bad that for Michigan that Oregon State chose this year to hire Justin Joyner off of Dusty May's bench, because I venture off to say they'd rather have Joyner than Mike Boynton leading this team, leading the Michigan team. I will say, obviously, Oregon State's roster is significantly worse, but they did get back leading scorer Josiah Lake from last season. And then I'm a big fan of their transfer class. They got some mid-majors who could really fill it up. Daniel Freitag at Buffalo. He didn't play for a great team, but I'm a big fan of him. Jackson Rasmussen was an impact player as a freshman at Idaho, and Idaho was a tournament team, and he did some great work in the Big Sky tournament. I do remember that. The recruiting at the freshman level hasn't been bad. Look, Oregon State, when they're bad, they're usually like bad, but it's not an impossible place to win. Even recently, they've had some solid seasons, and I see this being one of them.
Interesting. Ariel, do you agree?
I agree. I love this team. I've been a big fan of this team, and I would actually be curious to know if Joyner would be the Oregon pick, or sorry, the Michigan pick, if it was between him and Boyden, where they would go. Either way, the thing I love about this team is their size. I mean, I'm going to read you this off right now. They have a 6'9" player, 6'10" player, 6'11" player, and then a 7'1" guy and 2 7'2" guys. That's insane. That's deep. That's how you know he's a Michigan guy, because Dusty May always emphasized having those bigs, and just being taller than everyone else and having that advantage. And they have that and more. I think that was, how I talked about the filter that George Washington put, where it was just the ninth best guy on every team. I think they just put the filter to tallest player in the portal, and they clicked recruit. So I think that's going to be really interesting just to see how he throws out these lineups, and they'll never have a size disadvantage on the court, which is really intriguing, especially in the Pac-12 where that's really going to play to their advantage. So this is one of my teams I'm most excited to watch. And they also have a guy on their team named Legend Smiley, which is one of my top names in college basketball. So they're just giving me so many reasons to watch. I'm completely bought in on this team. I think they're a top 3 team in the Pac-12, and I think that they can make the tournament this year.
And we haven't even mentioned Deshaun Gorey either, another rising sophomore who had a real big freshman season. Look, when I was writing this Oregon State preview, I'm writing it, and I'm like, wow, another good guy to add to the depth chart. Wow, another good one. Another tall guy, like you mentioned. I mean, it just seems like there's so many scoring options to go behind Josiah Lake. Obviously, just win number one for Justin Joyner is getting Josiah Lake to stay after his first 3 years at Oregon State. I know he has family ties to Oregon State, but still, that doesn't mean that he was definitely going to stay for his senior year. Just an absolutely great get. Look, when you look at Boston College at 88, Oregon State at 83, I would say these are very similar program trajectories where they really haven't been very good recently, other than a few seasons here or there. One on the East Coast, one on the West Coast. Tough recruiting battles. Oregon State always going against Oregon and some of the other West Coast giants. Boston College in there in the Northeast against those premier Big East programs. What Justin Joyner did at Oregon State in this offseason was miles better than what Luke Murray did at Boston College, in my opinion. And I know we only have a couple spots separating these teams, but I don't know how the heck he got all these guys to go to Oregon State, because Oregon State is nowhere near as an attractive destination as Boston College. NIL-wise, looking at, you're in the big city, you're at BC, you have a chance to maybe do something there with all these other, like, they love college basketball there, and yet Justin Joyner has done this at Oregon State. We haven't even played a game yet, and I'm ready to switch my orange from Syracuse orange to Oregon State orange. I love Beavers. Chop, chop, Ariel.
Wow, okay. We'll have to put that one.
He just won up too.
Let's go to another team we all love, because that's a great transition to get us to the Miami, Ohio RedHawks. America's team last year. Did they do it in the NCAA tournament? Yes and no. It was fun watching them win in that first 4 game and the way they did it. And then it was just abysmal watching them play in the round of 64. But regardless, Travis Steele returned some guys, maybe trying to run it back, Dan. I doubt we see the season that we saw last year, but can we see Miami in the tournament yet again?
I think so. I think they're the clear favorite in the MAC. You also have Akron's head coach leaving to John Gross out to Charleston. So I think it's them or Toledo, and Toledo never wins MAC tournaments. So I think Miami is the clear favorite here. I will take the over on half of a regular season loss this year. I don't think they go 31-0, but they did. Travis Steele, that is their head coach, he has managed to run back a good-looking roster again. I love that backcourt of Luke Skaljak, who you guys probably know from watching last year's team, and then Evan Ipsaro, who was also very good, actually got injured for the season in late December. So that's a guy they didn't really have for most of the year. I like that guy, Rich Rolfe. He's a nice addition from Youngstown State, good floor spacer. And then the big thing is Antoine Woolfolk. He, in the last 3 days, has potentially secured eligibility. Of course, with the 5-and-5 rule, he's a high school grad of 2022, so potentially even playing 4 years without a red shirt, he might get into the rotation. That is big. I really like this team. They won't be as good as last year just because that's typically how regression works, but they're the clear favorite in the MAC once again. I would take them to win the MAC tournament and play in the NCAA tournament.
Ariel, would you have that same pick?
I agree completely. I think they're going to go 32-0 again. No, I don't. But that would be awesome. Maybe like 8-0. I think that's generous. Yeah, I mean, you said it. They're not as good as last year, but they're still comfortably the best team in the MAC. And I think Steele knows that, and I think that's his goal right now. Obviously, he'd like to win a tournament and make a run, but I think that he understands that this is the team that is going to get it done, at least from a MAC standpoint. So he did what he had to do. It's probably his last year at Miami, unless a team is stupid and doesn't take a chance on him, especially if he wins again. But for all the reasons you said, they should win this and be back in the tournament next year.
I'll give you my hot take right now. Travis Steele will be the head coach at Notre Dame after this season. I think that's what I see.
I'm in with that.
That's a fit. It's a fit. It makes sense.
Yeah, we'll see if it happens. We'll go back to this podcast and I'll say, see, I told you guys. I'll just say this one more thing on them. I'm thinking this team is kind of like when Loyola Chicago went to the Final Four, but then continued to be good. When Wichita State had a big run, but they were good the next year. I kind of see that in Miami this year. They're not going to go 32-0, obviously, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a Miami team with 26 or 27 wins come Selection Sunday. And this time people be like, yeah, they're legit. We got to put them in again. So that's what I see with this Miami team running through the MAC again, maybe a couple more losses, but still a very, very good team. Let's move on to number 81, Kansas State. They bring in Casey Alexander. He's a guy who just wins, Ariel. But I don't know. It looks like it might take a seat this year. I don't really like what he did here. It's a little bit better than Utah State, but it's not much of an improvement there. And look, I'll say this before I toss it to you. Very tough non-conference. Some trap games in there with South Dakota State and Montana. They've got Creighton. They've got Seton Hall. They've got Wichita State. And then they've got the Players era, which is Gonzaga, Alabama, or Baylor, and then someone else. So no easy games other than maybe a couple bye games for Kansas State. And then you got Big 12 play. So is there any way that Alexander continues his winning ways this season with K-State?
There is, and we know for sure it won't be as bad as last year. I mean, just with the 1-11 start in Big 12 play, Tang calling the team soft, Tang getting fired, them trying to fire him without paying him because they use that as an excuse, him saying, pay me, all that stuff. I don't have to go into it, but I think this is a floor situation with Alexander. They know that he's a guy who could win 20-plus games. He's a guy who's going to have his team fighting for the conference title, and I don't think that's going to be this year, unfortunately, because if we're being honest, this roster is pretty bad. Pretty similar to what we saw with George Washington. They just picked a bunch of guys who were low-level starters at bad schools. I'm talking about Abraham from Georgetown. We have Jaden Shutt from Virginia Tech, Des Lindsey from that Oregon team last year. That was terrible. Even Timo Melovich, he was on that good Miami team, but he barely played. So I don't really know what the strategy was here. Maybe they used all their money the last few years with Tang, and now they're kind of dry until they kind of see what they need. I think the NIL donors are more, we need to see results before we give money, unlike Tang, who was like, I just made the Elite Eight, give me a bunch of money, I'll get the best players. So this might be a rough year, but they'll be better than last year just because Alexander is a high floor coach. Just from a ceiling standpoint, though, it would be pretty impressive if he get them in the top 10 in the Big 12 this year.
Yeah, this roster is really bad. There's some guys that I would be okay having as like your 7th or 8th player on the team, and these are guys that you need to be the 2nd or 3rd player, leading scorer behind Braden Rechsteiner, who was not even that much of a standout for a not even that great Colorado State team. Like, I like the Casey Alexander hire. He has that consistent winning pedigree rather than just that hot up-and-comer that'll be there for 2 years until he finds something better. Like, I think that's the best case scenario hire for Kansas State, but it's very clear they didn't have money to have him build a roster based on the players that he has.
Do you think there's anyone on this team that's a Big 12 caliber player?
Rechsteiner is like a 3rd or 4th guy, and then Shutt is like a bench player. That's it.
Shutt was barely an ACC player, and he got worse.
He's a decent spot-up shooter. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
Interesting. Yeah. Also, Montana Wheeler, all Missouri Valley Conference bench team. I'm not trying to hate on Montana Wheeler, but Missouri Valley, come on. We don't need a team for everything. Just do a 6th man of the year. We don't need an all-bench team. That's kind of insane. All right, guys.
It's a safe bench team.
Yeah. Those are teams 90 through 81. Again, we appreciate you guys listening to us here on College Basketball Review Studio. But before I let you go, we have another game to play. And this one, shout out to the Bread Basket. Everyone knows who they are. I don't think I need to plug them more than that. But they do that game where you have 10 of a category. You guys don't know the thing that I'm thinking of. And I'll tell you right now that the 10 I'm going with are the 10 teams we talked today. I'm thinking of one team. So I told you guys it'd be easy. You got to figure out which team I'm thinking of, and you got to ask questions to narrow it down. I'm giving you guys 4, so you each get 2 questions, and then you got to think amongst each other for which team I'm thinking of. So, again, it's George Washington, it's Rutgers, it's Boston College, it's South Florida, it's Utah, it's Notre Dame, it's Boise State, it's Oregon State, it's Miami, it's Kansas State. And, yeah, you guys can guess ahead. Hopefully this game makes sense. But, Ariel, what am I thinking of today?
Will this team be better this year than last year?
No.
Okay. So I think that takes out USF. And
Not much. That doesn't narrow it. I would have
Boise
rather said the
State.
other way. Yeah, they're taking.
Maybe I should have looked at and Miami, obviously. So I think that takes out 3 of the 10.
All right. Is this program more known for what they've done in the past? Is this more of a historically strong program?
It is not.
Okay, not a historically strong program. Where can we go here? Say Rutgers is gone.
Utah.
BC gone, right?
I guess. Utah.
We keep BC in there. Notre Dame gone.
Yeah, kinda.
All right, let's just take that at face value, and you can ask your next one.
Would this team be historically under this coach more of a defensive or offensive program?
Oh, that's a good indication. Okay.
I will go toward defense.
Towards defense.
But I think the offense is right there. Like it would still be a very good offensive.
Is this team known as one of the more prominent teams in their conference? Currently.
I'll give you a little bit hit here, Dan, because I want to help you guys out. Yes, currently. So to recap, this team will not be better this year than they were last year. This team is a more prominent team in their conference. This team's coach, I'll lean defense, but the offense would be very good. And historically, not much there.
South Florida. Are we thinking that?
That's what I was thinking too.
All right, that's our guess.
You got it. It is South Florida. Now, I'll put you on the spot. Do you know why South Florida is the only team that stands out amongst these 10? It is something that they did last year.
Something they did that 9 of these other programs did not do.
Correct.
They made the tournament.
Yeah, I was going to say, right?
Yeah, I'll give that to you.
Miami did.
Won their conference tournament, though.
Okay.
That's what I'm going with. They won their conference tournament. Miami made the tournament. South Florida won their conference tournament. But good job, boys. I feel like the wording on Ariel's question was hopefully not stumping you. That's why I wanted to give you those recaps, because I was like, I feel like that could get tricked a little bit, because I thought you eliminated them at first, and I was like,
Yeah.
make sure you didn't eliminate them by accident. So
Good call.
there we go. Good job, boys. And as always, thank you guys all for listening and watching. I hope you guys have fun with the games we've been playing lately here. We're trying to bring more of that in, and hopefully you guys had some debate, had some fun listening to teams 90 through 81. Of course, we will have teams 80 through 71 coming up soon as we continue to fly through our CBB rank already here in mid-August. And until then, we will talk to you next time.